Hello, my name is Lola, and I'm going to be reacting to new Rockstars OBI WAN KENOBI Episode 4 breakdown, Easter eggs, and details you might have missed. If you want to like, comment, subscribe to my channel, you can. If you want to or not, that's fine too. Me, I just do this for fun, And let's see what Eric Voss has to say. Here we go.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of OBI WAN KENOBI Episode 4, in which Obi-Wan sneaks Leia out of a fortress using the same tactic I used to sneak Chipotle into an AMC. All of my favorite jackets are now stained with tomatillo salsa. Worth it! Let's break down this episode shot by shot for all the Star Wars Easter eggs and visual details that you might have missed, and a reminder that the best way you can support us here at New Rockstars is to check out our Obi-Wan inspired Empire's Most Wanted shirt at newrockstarsmerch.com. Getting it will give you the added option of writing a custom shout out for our Obi Wan Kenobi after shows. Now we gotta start actually in the opening Lucasfilm title slide, the one with the red and the blue lights flashing over metallic based characters. In this episode, they changed it to add our friend Ned B and Lola, our adorable little droid who flashes blue here, but by the end of the episode, we learn is Reva's tracker in the final shot with an eyepiece glowing evil red. The episode opens with Obi-Wan wounded on the shuttle to Jabim, still reeling from his roastin' last episode. Now Jabim is a muddy mining world from the now non-canon Dark Horse Republic comics, later the Empire comics, and in those stories a major site of a Clone Wars battle, but here we don't really see the muddy surface, only some polluted clouds on their way in, and the secret base that is hidden in some caverns. They cart Obi-Wan through the landing bay, passing some other refugees on the path, and other volunteers like Tala, who help these Force-sensitive victims escape to a peaceful life. But among the luggage and the gear looks like a rounded container of some kind. It does have a handle, but this might be the egg-shaped bassinet of our Lord and Savior Grogu. If this is the path for Force-sensitive refugees and Jedi survivors of Order 66, this is likely the same path Grogu would have been taken on to later end up with Din Djarin 40 years from now. Now, I guess I'd be surprised for it to just be sitting there, loose, unattended, in the landing bay 10 years after Order 66. But who knows, maybe it's sealed shut and they just can't get it open, and they don't know who or what is inside. Just that it is important, and I presume the baby Grogu would have some kind of a food supply. Then Obi-Wan plunges into the bacta-tank, and I like this bacta-tank. It's a good old school bacta-tank. The vertical setup with the wires and the harnesses, the same kind that Luke had on Hoth. None of the luxury tanning bed style bacta-tank that Boba Fett had. And I love this, the close-ups of Obi-Wan's burns cross-cut with Vader's scarred skin in his simultaneous back-to-bath. Two brothers in the same regenerative reflective state. Darth Vader burned Obi-Wan so bad that he would know his pain, and part of that pain is the emotional pain felt the next morning in a back-to-healing session. Because we learned in the Book of Boba Fett that back-to-baths have a sensory deprivation effect that causes one to dwell on inner unresolved issues. So now Obi-Wan is jerking around in this water, triggered by Vader's taunts and his attacks. And during this montage, Vader also suddenly stirs in his tank, seeming to react to Obi-Wan somewhere across the galaxy in another tank. The intercutting editing implies that the two might actually be sensing each other's active presences in their parallel baths. And Obi-Wan, unable to deal with this trauma, exits the bath early, which he might have also done to sever any link Vader might be forming to his present location. And the first thing Obi-Wan says after the bath?
Where's Leia?
Which reminds me of Finn in The Last Jedi, who woke up in a back-to-healing suit, and the first line he says in that movie is,
Where's Rey?
And we cut from the splashing Bacta fluid to the crashing waves of Nur, looking upward at the Fortress Inquisitorius. Obi-Wan cuts his watery healing session short, but he cannot escape water this episode, taking the plunge to enter the fortress and fleeing the floodwater in the lower levels of it. Leia snaps at the stormtroopers.
My father is Bail Organa. He's a senator. I am a princess of Alderaan.
Echoing her future haughty tones when she gets captured by the Empire again in A New Hope.
I'm a member of the Imperial Senate on a diplomatic mission to Alderaan.
Tala introduces Obi-Wan to Roken.
I need your help.
So does every kid making a rock float from here to Coruscant.
Roken, of course, referencing the Jedi training step of making stones float, which Yoda made Luke do in Empire, and Ahsoka tries to make Grogu do in The Mandalorian. And Roken says,
General, I'm sorry, but that's not my problem.
Yeah, he calls him General, which is a reminder of the General Kenobi, the general rank he had in the Republic Army. And really that whole thing of Jedi commanding and fighting alongside clone troopers was really part of what got him into that mess. Roken agrees to help because he had a Force-sensitive wife who was taken by the Empire, and boots up a scrappy holoprojector to show the ocean moon of Nur in its proximity to Mustafar. I love the contrasting elemental imagery, fire and water. And by the way, that ship that Vader is on would likely be the Devastator. That was the name of his Imperial Star Destroyer flagship that we saw in the Battle of Scarif in Rogue One. Now, the above above water portion of the fortress forms a pyramid, matching Vader's castle, even with two stubby prongs at the top. But the bulk of it is below water, as seen in the Jedi Fallen Order game. Overall, it makes for a pretty intimidating fortress, descending wider and wider into the ocean depths, a proverbial tip of the iceberg. Now, in the background of the scene is an astromech droid that looks like R2-D2, but it is not. It doesn't have the blue plating, but I just love when astromechs show up. I love these things. This guy, even that little evil one that they pass as they leave the fortress later on. Obi-Wan proposes,
We could take those speeders, go in at night. You have some T-47s in the hangar. It's suicide.
yes, T-47s are the same rebel snow speeders in the Battle of Hoth and Empire Strikes Back. We see these in action later. Obi-Wan struggles to force pull a small object, suggesting that using the Force at all opens his mind back up to Vader and to his pain, so it just really hurts him to use it at all. But I like how we see him struggling in the first act of this episode, setting up his badass mastery of it to control the water towards the end. It seems like two big things have changed in Obi-Wan's life between those points. One, having a purpose to rescue Leia, and two, getting a sense of the stakes by seeing all of his Jedi friends with their corpses on display. Reva tells Leia,
We intercepted a transmission on Belnab last year. Bunch of talk of a secret network, a path.
yes, Balnob is a mid-rim planet that shows up in Clone Wars, Season 4, Episode where 3PO and R2 discover pit droids are ruling over the locals on this planet under a phony holographic identity. But this planet is known to be home to a group of alien castaways, and it does make sense for it to be used as part of the path. But Reva slams a chunk of the wall with the Jedi crest that we saw in the Mapuzo safe house, meaning she likely obliterated that safe house, destroying all the names and messages from the other Jedi survivors, and more concerningly, removing it as the safe house for future runaways that Kumail can send people to. When Tala arrives in her Imperial transport, I like this. The first thing she passes on that hangar bay is a cart filled with the fuel cells with the glowing red cores, the same ones that Reva will later use to blow up Wade's T-47. So in effect, these are Chekhov's fuel cells. While Tala gets screened, we get this real in-your-face shot of an officer in a billowy overcoat walking right in front of the camera. I clock this as a pretty new piece of Imperial outerwear, but it was clearly put in here just to set up Obi-Wan later using one of these to hide Leia. And when the security officer scans her, the Aurebesh on screen translates to Captain Tala Durith Unknown, which is why this officer was like, you don't even go here. And Tala's able to talk him down.
Then I'm your commanding officer, and you will address me as Sir.
Yes, sir, of course, but...
Perhaps I should just inform the Grand Inquisitor of your insolence.
Interesting gamble by Tala here, because technically the Grand Inquisitor's seat is absent due to medical leave, either yet to be filled by another Inquisitor or with that Powan Grand Inquisitor alien and hopefully returns at some point to stay true to the Rebels' continuity. But the fact that this officer does not know that speaks to the Inquisitor's secrecy about their internal drama. Underwater, Obi-Wan uses a rebreather, the same tech that he and Qui-Gon used when swimming on Naboo, and he swims past a Blue Vev glider, a shark-like creature that Cal Kestis swims past in this location in Jedi Fallen Order. Obi-Wan's path this episode pretty much parallels this stage of the game. And near the port, you'll notice a squid-like creature that might be a Vixus, which also has a toothy maw. Now the Vixus and similar creatures like the Blixus and the Rathtar share a common ancestry with the Sarlacc, which is just another reminder that Tatooine was once an ocean-covered world, and its fauna have aquatic features reflecting that, like that whale carcass we saw in episode 1. Reva tries to scan Leia's mind.
It's the sister contest.
You're strong.
Echoing Kylo Ren's struggle to read Rey's mind in The Force Awakens, and Reva says,
The braver you seem, the more afraid you are. I learned that at a very young age as well. I had a droid when I was younger too. It was taken from me like everything else.
yeah, little hints at Reva's past, perhaps as one of those youngling runaways from that Order 66 prologue scene. But I wonder, what was this droid she's talking about? Could it have been Hu Yang, the architect droid who taught Jedi younglings on the Crucible and Clone Wars? Hu Yang will return in the live-action Ahsoka series, and one of those other younglings, the Wookiee Gunji, is appearing in Bad Batch. He survived. So if Reva was a temple runaway, she might have spent some time on the Crucible with Hu Yang. Using Netflix without ExpressVPN is like going to the store and only allowing yourself to shop on the odd-numbered aisles. You're missing out on those even-number aisle goodies. Well, thanks for free by visiting expressvpn.com/newrockstars or clicking the link in the description below. Obi-Wan evades the seeker droids who are on patrol. We actually saw some seeker droids used by the Seventh Sister in Rebels. Listen to the sound this one makes. It's the same sound as the interrogator droid that tortures Leia in A New Hope. And that interrogation in New Hope definitely matching the one Leia nearly goes through in this episode. The comm devices they use are the same communicators that Han and Luke used on the Death Star in A New Hope. You'll also notice in this episode they all use their code cylinders, which are actually just originally costume props from the original trilogy, but in Rebels Season 3, we finally saw them used practically, which is something that they continue to do in The Mandalorian. Obi-Wan has to hide from some stormtroopers who have some chatter. I love how even the stormtroopers are creeped out by the layout in the depths of this fortress. They also may be smelling some mummified bodies on the ground floor. But Obi-Wan starts to get a hang of his force powers, using them to cast a noise that distracts the troopers, just as Obi-Wan does on the Death Star in A New Hope. But Obi-Wan finds the inner chamber and realizes the dark truth.
This place isn't a fortress.
It's a tomb.
It's a tomb.
And I love how Ewan delivers this with the same cadence in Dread as...
That's no moon. It's a space station.
The Jedi corpses are suspended in an amber-like substance, which, unlike carbonite, might allow the Inquisitors to repurpose their corpses to trap Jedi the way the Grand Inquisitor does with Luminara Unduli's corpse in Rebels. This encasing could also be how they extract some M-count-rich blood from them for some cloning. And those lightsabers on display on the red shelf in the upper room are likely the lightsabers of these killed Jedi. Now, counting all the cells that I could see on the upper level and the lower level, I estimate about 48, 16 on the ground level, 32 on the upper level. We only see a handful of them in the actual cells. In the wide shot from the end of the corridor, on the right is an Ongri male who could be either Pablo Jill from Attack of the Clones or Coleman Kasaj from the Jedi Council in Revenge of the Sith, whose name also appeared on a list of names of Jedi fugitives in the 2017 Charles Soule Darth Vader comics alongside Quinlan Vos. And to the left of that wide shot is a male with long hair who does look a lot like Quinlan Vos, but I think Obi-Wan would have paused to look at him longer, and I just doubt they would bring up Quinlan Vos last episode as a living survivor just to reveal him dead like this, like in passing. But the real heartbreaker among these is a Cassian named Tara Sinube, an elder Jedi master from Clone Wars who once helped Ahsoka Tano find her lightsaber, a mentor to various younglings over the years, including ones like Sifo Dyas and Dooku. He was known for carrying a white or silver lightsaber in a cane. It just sucks to see that this guy died. And I'm actually wondering if he might have helped some younglings escape Order 66, maybe even on the Crucible with Huyang, and Reva might have betrayed him and turned him in order to gain acceptance to the Inquisitors. That's just my theory. As Obi-Wan walks past these cells, there are a few new faces we're still trying to identify. Like there's one with an odd square-shaped headpiece that at first I thought was George Lucas's character from Revenge of the Sith, but no, a completely different headpiece, and I don't think that guy was a Jedi. There's another one with thick padded armor, and then a close-up of a woman's face in shock, and then another woman in a poncho with a necklace. I wouldn't be surprised if one of these two women might be Roken's Force-sensitive wife. Then this youngling boy, who is actually someone we've seen before. He's credited as actors, the twin brothers Jonathan Ho and Oliver Ho, who are also credited as playing one of the younglings in the Order 66 flashback in the episode 1 prologue. So if Reva was part of that group, this would mean this is one of her friends who is frozen in youth for 10 years. As Obi-Wan leaves his quarter, there is a bald, dark-skinned man on the upper right who might be Mace Windu, but this guy in the cell has a right hand that is clearly visible, and remember, Anakin sliced off Mace's right arm, and I just doubt that they would leave Mace's fate just in passing like this without a close-up of him. Now, there are plenty of other Jedi who have been hunted by Inquisitors or by Vader or clone troopers who might be here. I mentioned Luminara Unduli, but of course we saw Plo Koon, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Aayla Secura, Depa Billaba, Sindralig. All these characters are dead. There's also Jara Tapal from Fallen Order, who might be among these. Meanwhile, Reva straps Leia to this torture rack, which is very similar to the device and the chamber in Jedi Fallen Order that was used to torture Seer Junda. If this is something a lot of Inquisitors have had to go through, maybe this is something Reva has experienced herself, which is why she's so willing to put Leia through it. But Tala is able to distract Reva away, telling her,
They're on Florum. The network runs out of the Sertar sector.
yes, Florum is an Outer Rim planet that also came up in Clone Wars. It's a barren planet serving as the residence of the pirate gang of Hondo Onaka. So Tala is not just saying any planet, she's trying to draw the Inquisitors to a remote planet out in the boonies where pirates might attack them. Obi-Wan's able to rescue Leia by shutting off the lights and going to work with his blue lightsaber. Imagery totally paralleling the Force Unleashed 2 E3 trailer footage of Starkiller, which Sam Witwer, whose likeness they used in addition to him being the voice of Maul, tweeting yesterday that Obi-Wan took his legs and his dance moves. This is also an example of Obi-Wan embracing Quinlan's words of wisdom from last episode, using the darkness to find the way. Leia tells him that she didn't snitch, and Obi-Wan says,
I know.
and as Han told us, I know is Star Wars for I love you.
I love you.
I know.
When Obi-Wan and Leia are finally spotted at classic Star Wars Imperial alarm rings,
Verbs in them.
It's him.
I love how Obi-Wan uses defensive maneuvers to take out the stormtroopers and that secret droid, using the stormtrooper's blast to take out the droid and then deflecting all the other blasts, him getting more and more confident as this episode goes. Meanwhile, Reva's reinforcements include a black and red armored purge trooper, and they take on Obi-Wan in this glass-lined corridor, and you see his rising comfort level with the saber. He does a no-look backswing deflection at a trooper behind him, and then actively batting a blast like a baseball at a control panel. Obi-Wan finally musters up his strength to use the Force to slow the breaking glass and the leaking water, and then as they come through the door, he directs those cracks back toward them and floods them, controlling the flow of the water, just like how in Jedi Fallen Order, Darth Vader was able to use the Force to hold back the water in the same way. The fifth brother and the fourth sister charge down the main concourse, passing right by Tala and Obi-Wan with Leia tucked in the coat. You can see them in the background there. But there are a lot of weird things going on in the shot. Like there are these two overlit stormtroopers who come into the frame on the left side after the characters leave it. And then there's just various groupings of officers, and all of these groupings just look plated in. Most of these large locations are of course shot in the volume, which is awesome looking usually, but I think in this case what throws it is that one random squad of stormtroopers in the distant background marching leftward across frame. And if you were to map out their vector, they're really just marching toward the window wall to look at fish, I guess. Like clearly the people who made this scene just wanted general background movement to show the chaos, but this is also in a shot where they wanted us to look at Tala and Ben and Leia there. And I'm not saying this to be overly critical, I just think when shots look weird like this, there's usually a very subtle logical reason why, and I think it helps us to better appreciate the overall very difficult task of VFX artists when we identify that specific reason instead of just shrugging it all off with a big, it all looks bad. Doesn't all look bad. Overall, this design of the setting is gorgeous, but it's just in this case, I think the design outweighs the practicality a little bit, which at the end of the day, I think is okay. Reva catches up to them and screams. Yeah, she's doing her best impression of Kylo Ren yelling at Finn in The Force Awakens. Traitor! Sully and Wade drop in their T-47s, leading to this shootout where this poor mouse droid gets hit and recoils, steering back in the same way as it does when Chewie roars at one in A New Hope. Tala, Obi-Wan, and Leia cram into the backseat of Sully's T-47, and Wade holds off Reva just a bit too long, allowing Reva to chuck a fuel cell at him. Boom! Reva does not send all those hanging TIE fighters or probes or anyone after Sully's T-47, which seems completely bonkers, until we realize in the next scene that she intentionally let Leia and Obi-Wan escape so that they could track her with Lola to Jabeam or wherever the next step on the path is. I've speculated the path could lead to places like Crate or maybe Tython, which would explain why there's that Jedi beacon on Tython. Now remember, we did see Reva holding Lola earlier, presumably that was when she slipped the tracker on it. And I assume that she did this as a contingency in case Leia and Obi-Wan were able to escape, because otherwise she would have no reason to chase them down and try to attack them. I love this. Vader storms into the boardroom, marching faster than I think we've ever seen Vader charge in live action. And it is pretty terrifying to see him move this fast. But ultimately, I love the elemental imagery around Vader right now. He ended last episode surrounded by fire. Now he's surrounded by gloomy water, taking him back to his back-to-bath in the opening images. Fire represents his division from Obi-Wan, water represents his reunion with him. And as they mourn Wade on the freighter, Lola's eyepiece, which previously glowed blue, matching the protective color of Obi-Wan's lightsaber, now glows red, the color of the hostile blades of Reva and Vader, who now are watching very closely. Another reminder to check out our merch options over at newrockstarsmerch.com. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EABoss. Follow New Rockstars, subscribe to New Rockstars for more analysis of everything you love. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye, Eric. Yeah, there was definitely some stuff in there I didn't know. Like, what? Anyway, that'll do for my reaction to Obi-Wan Kenobi Episode 4 breakdown, Easter eggs, and details you might miss. If you want to see my full reaction to Obi-Wan Kenobi, you can look in the description down below. It'll be right there. And we'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.